down to the last drop. Down to the last drop. 2 Kings 4 verse 1 says as follows, "And now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elisha, saying, Thy servant, my husband, is dead. And thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord. And the creditor is come, and he's going to take unto him my 2 sons to be bondsmen. And Elisha said unto her, What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what hast thou in the house? And she said, Thine handmaid hath not anything in the house, save a pot of oil. Then he said, Go borrow thee vessels abroad of all thy neighbors, even empty vessels, borrow not a few. And when thou art come in, thou shalt shut the door upon thee and thy sons, and shalt pour out into all those vessels, and thou shalt set aside that which is full. So she went from him and shut the door upon her and upon her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured out. And it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said unto her son, Bring me yet a vessel. And he said unto her, There is not a vessel more. And then the oil stayed. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, Go sell the oil, and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children of the rest. We see this lady. She's as close to being in a hopeless situation as can be. She is definitely considered helpless. There is no help except for God's choosing. There is no hope except for God. She's one of the wives of the sons of the prophets. So we know that she had an idealism of who God was and is. We can take that to know that she understood that miracles could occur, that messages were given, that if God chose, her sons could be saved. But it would take him. There would be no other way. There could be, we actually see the question, and if you actually look into it a little deeper, I feel like it maybe tells a little more to the story. When Elisha says, Well, what do you have in your house? She says, I don't have anything in the house. In other words, I don't want to speak into the scripture, my own thoughts and possibilities, but with her, the way she says that I don't have anything save a pot of oil, I think it could be something like, well, I hocked the couch. The jewelry's, that's went to the pawn shop. I've done everything I can, and I don't have anything except a little bit of oil. I have enough fuel to add to, well, actually, you know what, prophet? I don't have any bread. I don't have any flour. I just have a little bit of oil. But get this, prophet. If I don't do anything, the creditor, he's going to come. He's going to take my sons, and he's going to enslave them. You have to help me. She knew that if she could just speak to the prophet, perhaps everything could be right. She was aware of God. She was aware of his ability, but yet she seemed to lack the same relationship, possibly, of the prophets of God. There was no seeking an intercessory until God answered, and we hear the story of the lady with a pot of oil. But no, it's the lady and a little bit of oil and a prophet. It took her coming to the man of God, or if we want to put it into our vernacular, it came to her moving out of where she was comfortable and actually going into the presence of God, or the house of God. Do you see what I said earlier about you making the decision today to show up? There is a lot more to that. It is not a happenstance that you are here. It is not tradition for you to attend. There are 1,000 other things that you could do today, some of which would not be considered evil in and of itself, but you chose to shadow the house of God. And I applaud you because you're in a place of a miracle. You may feel today that you are down to the last drop. But as a man of God, I ask you this. What do you have in your house? Do you at least have a little bit of oil? Do you at least have a little bit of faith? Because if you do, oh, thank God, that is enough. That is enough. Little is much if God is in it. You may be down to the last drop, but at least the last drop is in the presence of God. The miracle never came, though, until one condition was satisfied. Technically two. First of which is go out and get as many pots and pans as you can. Go ask your neighbors, can I borrow your pots? Can I borrow? Man, what are you doing? Yeah, the same ones that know that you don't have a thing in your house and may be a little concerned that you're going to hawk their stuff. Don't worry about it. Just go see how many you can get. And her sons, they go out and do that. They gather it all into the house, okay? So we put it into the house. And then something happens. Does anybody know? She's told to shut the door. Go into that place. Bring in all the pots, all the pans. Get it all into your room. And then I want you to make a big decision. The door that has been open. I've been doing this a lot lately, but it's not really to just get a breeze, even though it's nice. The door that has been opened. The door that has people looking at you like you're a fool. Shut the door. Get in the presence of God. She's not told to go into prayer and fasting. She's not told to speak a certain thing over the pot. There is no incantation. There is no recipe. You just get the pans, get the pots, bring them into the house, and then shut the door. We would have a lot more of God in our lives if we could just learn to shut some doors. I'm going to just let you figure that out for a moment. Just think on it. Selah. Ponder. If you would just shut some doors in your life while I battle this addiction. Shut the door. Get alone with God. Get into His house. Get into His presence. It's a lot harder to be shot down with an arrow if you're standing inside the house. If you're standing behind the fortress. David refers to him as my fortress. He's my hiding place. That he talks about, one of them talks about, I think it's a psalm of the sons of Korah possibly, Psalms 91, that they who dwell in the secret place of the Most High God shall abide in the shadow of the Almighty. And it doesn't matter how big the arrow looks. It doesn't matter what may be coming your way. Once you get in behind God and you shut the door, you suddenly say, it's not me, it's you. Take care of them. Do it. She talked to the man of God. She was told what she needed to do. She was told what she needed to borrow, but then she was told to shut the door. So she went from him and shut the door. upon her and her sons who brought the vessels to her. Then she poured out. Now, that's when the miracle takes place. We see this canister of oil. We don't even know how big her pot was. It could have been a big thing. It could have just been a little thing. But they have all these misshapen tools from other people's houses. And she's just, I'm holding on to the word of God. I'm holding on. The prophet said, as she pours out, there's only that much oil. So what in the world? Hey, we grab another pot, grab another pot, grab another pot. It still feels the same, but get another one. And it says that it kept going until there was not a vessel more. And then the oil stayed. So once you get into the place of God, once you close the door off of the distractions, once you close the door off from the whatever it is that is attacking you, and you get into His presence, you now let Him pour into you until there's no room left. That's a lesson that we have lost in our time of day. I remember as a child, souls coming back, prodigals that had been gone for 20 or 30 years but had been filled with the Holy Ghost at one point in their life. And when they came back to God, they just stood in His presence until they could no longer stand. And then my dad or my mom would bring them a chair, and the lights, they would be dimmed down, and the fellowship that was already a little lower because this guy's praying back in. His name was Mick. I'm not making this up. He was there and he was praying through, and everybody else left. But old brother Mick, he stood there, he sat there, and he spoke in tongues as the oil was poured into his life. We give up when we still have a pot to go. We give up when we just get a little bit of a goosebump. We give up and we say that I can do it my own way, and I think since I felt Him, surely He'll let me in. But I've come to tell you today, you got to get the last drop. You got to get down to the last drop. You got to let Him overflow you. Then you can go and live. Then Walmart doesn't attack your soul as much. Then the Facebook post, it may aggravate you, but you suddenly have the willpower to not reply. You suddenly have the willpower to just, I think I might uninstall for a week. You have the, I don't think I'm going to talk like that. I don't think I'm going to do that. And you find yourself, you go through it, and maybe you're in the battle, and maybe whatever it is knocking on your door, but here's the difference between this miracle and him. For her, she just needed oil for money to pay a debt. For you, the debt has already been paid, and He just flows freely. So when addiction knocks at your door, when whoever it is decides to hit you up on the messages, when lust knocks at your mind, when doubt knocks at your home, and when fear and confusion are just standing out your door and you don't know what you're going to do, you can just say, all right, God, I'm empty. Fill me some more. It is oil. It doesn't run empty. It doesn't run out. He gives freely. Oh, hallelujah. We like being told about how Jesus took the empty containers and filled them with wine. That they were first water, and then He changes it to wine. How He can heal, how He can save, how He can restore. We like even mentioning that, just the mention of his name. But when we start hearing that it takes a changed lifestyle, it seems like sometimes suddenly it's not as real for us. The door gets some weight. The door, I can't do it. I don't think I'm strong enough to close it. I don't think I'm able to shut those things off. And we maybe even start saying things like, I don't know if this whole Pentecost thing is for me. They yell a lot. They talk in languages I don't even know. I think that one guy may have been Russian. I don't. They do weird things like being baptized in water and say that it somehow washes away all of their sins. I don't understand it. And sometimes we can just listen to the voice of the enemy long enough that he gets us to leave the door open. Meanwhile, our souls are being sold to the creditor. But for this lady, she was desperate for a miracle, and her conditions were just right. If you come in here hurting, guess what? You're so much closer to touching God. If you come into this place broken, you are so much closer to being healed by God. Oh God, that they would have their eyes open and that they would see what I am saying is you and not me. If you have come into this place hurting, if you've come into this place thirsty, there is healing and there is oil. Though you may be down to the last drop, your conditions are just right for a miracle. Oh, this lady, she was desperate. She had dotted every I. She had crossed every T. She had the word of the Lord for her. Now she just simply had to execute the plan. And she does. And it happens. But the whole door thing doesn't end. It just closes off with her story. We don't see the door just mentioned at this moment, at this time. But in fact, the next miracle that takes place, we see it brought up again. I'll let you read the story on your own time. It's found in the same chapter. But in reference, we see a couple. They couldn't have kids. Some of you have heard me talk about this before when I spoke on the Don't Bury revival. They couldn't have kids, but they never really mention it to the prophet that we know of. If they did, it was just maybe in happenstance, maybe we've tried, but there's never an asking, there's never a pleading, there's never a begging God for a child. It doesn't even seem like they bug him once. But there's so much dedication in this lady's life that she pleads with her husband and says, I wonder, could we just build the man a room? He comes by here so often. We invite him in for, coffee and bagels. But then he has to go on his way. Why? And I know I'm paraphrasing, but why don't we just build him a room? Let's just make a special place for him that he can go in behind him. He can shut the door and just be alone with God and recoup. And her husband says, well, yeah, let's do it. So she does it. Elisha, he keeps going by this house. He now stays in this room. And finally, he's talking to his helper by the name of Gehazi. And he says to the essence of, Gehazi, do you know anything that this lady needs? What her husband and her, they've just been so good. Is there anything you know of? And Gehazi like it's nothing, just says, well, I don't really know of anything, but, well, except that her husband's old and they haven't been able to have kids. There is that. But Gehazi, he just mentions it like it's just nothing. Like, I mean, I guess you could do that. If God could heal her barrenness, her brokenness of many years, their husband and wife suffering, if there is just that little thing, for those who have suffered barrenness, that is not a little thing at all. It is not something that for someone to say that, yeah, if you could just heal that, it would be nonchalant. It would be a big thing. It would be a great thing. It would be a, God, he can do what? He's going to what? And it says in verse 15 that Elisha, he called her, and when she had called her, she stood in the door. She's now in a place where everything is going to change. He mentions to her about the situation and says, about this season, according to the time of life, you'll embrace a son. And she looks at him and says, no, my Lord, thou man of God, do not lie to thy handmaid. And I won't keep a lot of time on this portion, though, but we don't see any reference to Elisha saying anything back. We don't know if he just simply kind of is like, no, that's your message, and walks away. We don't know if maybe whatever was mentioned just, no, it's going to happen, but it just didn't need to be said again. But that's how it's captured. The last words we hear are, don't you lie to me. And that may be what you're saying today. You've told me I can be healed. You've told me I can be delivered. You've told me I can be set free. You've told me that I don't have to give in to the same things that I have before, but don't you lie to me. Well, guess what? You're standing in the middle of the door, and I tell you as the man of God, I'm not. Just the mention of his name, everything can change. For this lady, it happens. She gets pregnant. She has a child. He grows up to be old enough to run into the fields. And then while he's in the fields, this little Shunammite boy, while he's in the fields watching his daddy, he starts to die. Something happens, a heat stroke or trauma, something in his body takes hold from the heat of the day or whatever. And they take him back to his mommy. He sits on her lap, and he dies. The miracle is dead. The thing that she had waited at the door for is gone. And it says, when he dies, in verse 21, she went up, laid him on the bed of the man of God, and what'd she do? Shut the door upon him and went out. Up until this moment, it would seem that she stood in the middle of the door figuratively. Up until this moment, the middle of life's path was what she had. It was I don't know that he can do that. And then, oh, how he does that. God's good. But the door is seemingly open to anything and everything except a little bit of hope. Just a little jar of oil that tells her, surely the prophet didn't do this to take him away. Surely he didn't I told him not to lie to me. So she puts him in his room and she shuts the door and she goes hunting for God, the man of God. Verse 33, he went therefore, after she gets a hold of him, she draws him back. She doesn't settle for Gehazi. He tries to send him, but it's to no avail. And she waits for Elisha to get there, and it says that he went in and he shut the door on them both. And he prayed unto the Lord. He went up, he laid upon the child. He put his mouth upon his mouth, his eyes upon his eyes, his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself over the child. And finally the flesh gets a little bit warm. Then he returned and he walked in the house to and fro. And he went up and he stretched himself upon him. The child sneezed 7 times and then opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi and said, "Call the Shunammite." So he called her. And when she was come in unto him, he said, "Take up thy son." Then she went out and fell at his feet and bowed herself to the ground, took up her son, and went out. If she would have shut the door and went out herself, she would have left her miracle with God, but she herself would have walked away. If the little woman, the widow woman, would have had the vats of oil, or the vat of oil, the pot of oil, the pan of oil, she would have just had this container full and only gathered up some other pots, but not shut herself in with God, I don't think it would have happened. I don't think we would have ever heard the report. She would have been one of those that turned away and said, "Yeah, that sounds crazy." But she chose to put it in to the house of God, to close her door behind her, to stand in his presence. The lady who shut the door and walked away did not walk away from God, but went running as close to him as she could. She left her miracle in his hands. It was in the best place it could possibly be. And she herself runs to the man of God and says, "I told you not to lie to me. He's dead. What are we going to do about it? What are you going to do about it, Elijah? What are you going to do?" John 10:7. "Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep." And in verse 9, "I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture." Matthew, I think it is, it says, "But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door. Pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees you, or who sees in secret, will reward you." There are times that you have to just get in and shut the door. You have to wait on him. And that's the hardest part. You have to just trust that when the door is shut, all right, it's just you and me and a little bit of oil. What are we going to do here? That's when it happens. It's the weight, though, that hurts. It's the weight on Elisha to get back to the house. It's the wonderment of if my miracle will ever walk again, or if I will even have a miracle and my sons will be enslaved. But if I just wait, I guess if I just hold on a little bit, I'll do what he says. I'll shut the door. I'll walk into that place. I will try, sister, if you wouldn't mind coming back to the piano. I'll get into his presence. Just me. My little bit of oil. What am I doing? That's too big. Just me. And my little bit of oil. It's not much. Those are some big pans. Those are some big debts. This is all I got. But the man, God said, to get in, shut the door, gathered them. I have everything I need. I have the pans. I have the pots. I have everything I need. I got that one. There's an empty container. I got that. I got that one, and man, it's just a little, that's a lot of space. It's a little bit of oil. Though your faith be the size of a mustard seed, He can use it to move mountains. You may be down to the last drop. You may not even have this container size of faith. But guess what? You've already obeyed half of the command. You've went into the house of God and the door shut behind you. It's just you and Him and a little bit of oil. What do you need? Go ahead, bring your containers up. Go ahead and just start pouring it out and see what He'll do. Whoa, that one's full. How much we have left? Still. All right, how much we got? Well, I guess we got that one. All right, fill up the next one. All right. Fill up the next one. All right. Hey, we still... Something that is never mentioned about, and I don't know if I've ever even heard preached about, and I don't even think of, honestly, until this very moment, is when everything else is filled, it never says the original container ran out. It's never emptied into. I really believe, brother, that she was pouring it into these pans. All right, bring me another one. All right, bring me another one. All right, bring it. We don't have any. What? And she tilts it up. We don't have any. Well, I get... This may be all you carry is a little bit of oil, but He'll multiply it. The last drop will never run out. Oh, Jesus. Can we stand? I am the door, Jesus said. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. He mentions in another verse that if anyone tries to enter in another way, they're the same as a thief and a robber. That's where we have to be careful. There are a lot of people speaking other ways. There's only one way. It's getting filled by the oil. You can't accept Him into it. You can't just good vibe yourself into heaven. There is no positive thinking, though it may help you feel good. But at the end of the day, the debtor's still coming for your soul. But if you have a little bit of oil, I know a whole lot of God. He can touch you today. Would you come? Would you come? Whether you're on empty, whether you're half full, whether you just got done being filled during worship, but you feel like you may have just used a little bit, would you bring your vessel up? And would you let Him fill you? Would you let Him just change you into something more as we go ahead and sing?